Now let's have Dr. Marek Laskiewicz join us to discuss the Russia-Ukraine war plus what's left of the Israel-Gaza ceasefire deal, if any. Good to have you join us, Doctor. Do you think the Russian attack will affect the fragile relations between Russia and the U.S., especially with Trump's unpredictability?
It will have an effect on further making the possibility of any agreement further away. It is not a major incident, it's a minor one. The fundamental major problem is that Russia and America, Ukraine, have different goals. In these goals, Russia's made it quite clear it is unwilling in any shape or form to tolerate Western troops. It wants to keep the areas it has occupied and make sure that Ukraine doesn't join the hostile ranks against it. And this is precisely what Ukraine does not want to do, and indeed Europe. And therefore, it's very hard to see any agreement. And therefore, coming on top of this major problem is, of course, this incident here that we had, where it was quite blatantly targeting civilians. And this will further help exacerbate the problem.
Again, Dr. Marek, do you agree with the U.S. envoy Keith Kellogg that the strike crossed the decency line? And do you expect any retaliation from Ukraine?
Well, to be quite honest, there have been so many of these strikes that I don't see this as any better or worse than many others previously. So whether Ukraine retaliates or not, I expect them to do so just as in the past. However, that's not the point. The point is this is the first one, if you like, which has hit the Americans between the eyes and which is showing that Russia, although it has professed a desire for a ceasefire, is not going down that road at all. And therefore, from that point of view, this is why it is important. But as for it provoking some sort of retaliation, well, we've had many of these incidents before.
Now, I want you to also, let's touch on, the issue of Trump using the carrot, stick approach. Do you see him using any sort of, I don't want to use the word force now, but economic strategy to ensure that Russia puts a hold to the ceasefire that's ongoing now?
I don't see it in the short term because talks are still going on between Russia and America, and therefore he will not do anything now. Secondly, he does not want to use force. He's basically an economics guy. He wants the sanctions and something like that is more to his taste. Thirdly, he is weakened because he's recently withdrawn the tariff on smartphones for China. And this has shown up his whole tariff strategy is beginning to fall apart, especially with the recent problems in the bond markets. And therefore is slightly weaker than before. But simultaneously, and this is the, if you like, the threat to Russia, he is talking about neutralizing Iran in some way. Quite unclear how far he's prepared to go. He has talked about bombing Iran, and that is, of course, a key ally for Russia. And therefore, from this point of view, yet again, it seems to add to the difficulty of there being any solution to the talks, but there will be no immediate strike by President Trump right now, either economically or militarily.
I mean, I've seen, some conversation with regards to this, and some people are expecting Trump to demand compensation from Russia over the killing of civilians in northeastern city of Sumy. I want you to react to that. Plus, does this put the EU, Putin, the US, and its allies on collision course?
Well, first of all, I don't see what basis he can demand compensation, and I don't think he's remotely interested, to be honest. I believe that rather this has shown up simply that his strategy of seeking a ceasefire is certainly not working out, and this is the key problem. The amount of compensation is minimal. On the other hand, please note, there is no formal group here because the president and Ukraine, that's President Donald Trump and Ukraine, have not agreed to any mineral treaty, which is a point, of course, which is helping Russia. And secondly, the whole business of the EU is now acting, if you like, as on its own. And the very notion that it might send troops the moment there's a ceasefire is actually exacerbating the issue because it means that Russia is more intransigent. And technically, there's little Donald Trump can do about this. So therefore, rather than it being a case of the West, including Ukraine, against Russia is rather a question of disparate groups, and so an impossibility of agreeing to a ceasefire, let alone a peace treaty.
Now, let's move quickly now to the Israel-Gaza, talks. What is left of, this conversation? I mean, we started with a ceasefire deal. Now we have Israel, still having to push Palestinians here and there. So what's left? Is there any hope?
Well, in principle, there's always hope. However, it has to be said, as you've implied, that there's very little of it. The fact of the matter is that it's unclear how far Israel is prepared to go. There are at least 3 or 4 different possibilities. It's still looking for the Gazans to leave. It's trying to force the Gazans to leave by dispiriting them, by the constant bomb attacks, by the lack of aid coming through, and by the missiling of the hospitals. Or that, in fact, is trying to simply push for the hostages to be returned, although here the demand that Hamas leaves as well, of course, is a difficult one for Hamas. On the whole, it has to be said that talks appear to be very difficult. We hope that Egypt and Qatar can at least start some sort of talks and have some sort of negotiations. But as things stand, Israel is simply going further and further at present, and let us hope that there's no tragedy. Though please note, if no food aid gets through and there are no hospitals, there may well be a very difficult situations for Gazans in the near future.
So do you trust Israel's claim of targeting Hamas's command and control center, and by doing so hitting hospitals? A lot of people are reacting to that as well.
Yes, unfortunately, there are 2 explanations, and it's very hard to be certain which one it is. There's the Israeli explanation. Whenever they launch a missile attack, it was against Hamas. And there's the other possibility that they're simply using this as an excuse to take out the hospitals, to break the Palestinians, the Gazans, that is, spirit, and in this way to ensure that they will leave voluntarily because they've had enough of staying in these circumstances. Which of these explanations is true? It's hard to tell at present because we simply don't have enough facts. The one that seems to favor the idea that they're using this as an excuse is the oddity about them not letting any food aid through. That is indeed rather suspicious because it implies that they are trying to break the Gazans. However, they assert enough food aid has gone through before, and then they're trying to just recover the hostages. It has to be said in all honesty, the real problem is that the breakdown of the notion of the second part of the ceasefire, which was incidentally also prompted by President Trump, demanding all hostages be released quite simply, irrespective of the deal reached. This is the basis of the problem. And it's not going to go away very quickly. But as to your comment, there are 2 possibilities. Yes, it is hard to say which one it is as we stand.
Thank you so much for making our time to join us tonight on Arise America. That is Dr. Marek Laskiewicz from London there.